We're dealing with a message today that is entitled Feet Washing. Hallelujah. Feet washing. I want to read, and I'm going to read from verse 1 to 17, and then we're going to go back. Now, before the feast of the Passover, when Yeshua knew that his hour was come, that he should depart out of this world unto the Father, having loved his own which were in the world, he loved them unto the end. And supper being ended, the devil having now put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him. Yeshua, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he was come from Elohim and went to Elohim, he riseth from supper and laid aside his garments and took a towel and girded himself. After that he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel wherewith he was girded. Then cometh he to Simon Peter, and Peter said unto him, Lord, dost thou wash my feet? Yeshua answered and said unto him, What I do thou knowest not, but thou shalt know hereafter. Peter said unto him, Thou shalt never wash my feet. Yeshua answered him, If I wash thee not, thou hast no part with me. Simon Peter said unto him, Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. Yeshua said to him, He that is washed needeth not save to wash his feet, but is clean every whit, and you are clean, but not all. For he knew who should betray him, therefore said he, You are not all clean. So after he had washed their feet and had taken his garments and was set down again, he said unto them, Know you what I have done to you? You call me Master and Lord, and you say, Well, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and Master, have washed your feet, ye also ought to wash one another's feet. For I've given you an example that you should do as I've done to you. Verily, verily, I say unto you, the servant is not greater than his Lord, neither he that is sent greater than he that sent him. If you know these things, happy are ye if you do them. Now, we could read this passage, and like many who have read this passage before, they will come away with, okay, Yeshua instituted a feet washing service. But the question is that what he actually did? After coming into the Messianic faith and then into the Hebrew roots of the faith, I've had people from time to time ask me, especially around Passover, if we were going to have a feet washing, or as they say, foot washing service or ceremony. On one such occasion, after saying no, I was accused of being prideful, and that my pride would not allow me to demonstrate humility by washing someone's feet. Now, I could have taken that personally, but I knew what I was dealing with, because there's nothing humble, if you would, by washing somebody's feet. I'm just going to say it. There's nothing humble about that, especially in a church service. And you'll see what I mean here in just a minute. Many years ago, as an apostolic Pentecostal, we would have these random feet washing services where people would put their humility on display. And they would use this passage as a means to give biblical reference to their actions. Anytime you have to put your humility on display for all to see, one must ask, is it true humility being displayed or an act of pride clothed in humility? We know where we stood when we've watched people's feet in the past. Washing their feet didn't eliminate the pride that was in our heart. And those who washed our feet. Because after the foot washing service or the feet washing service, you will see that the people who demonstrated humility washing somebody else's feet weren't humble at all. When it came down to their daily activities and the daily lives and how they treated people on a regular. For that moment, they may have demonstrated some humility, but it wasn't even humility that they demonstrated if you were to look at the heart of a person and not the action of a person. Is Yeshua instituting a feet washing tradition or giving a command to institute feet washing at Passover? Or is he teaching his disciples about serving one another? Because in essence, this is what he's doing. And if you look at the passage, if you look at what he says, and don't just focus on foot washing, you will get the whole scope of what he was trying to do. But if you just look at this particular passage, totally separate from all of the other conversations he have had with them about humility, then you will see this passage as a broader piece of more passages. And now he's coming to the end of his earthly ministry with his disciples. He's going to drive home a message that he has been trying to drive home his entire ministry with these fellas. Feet washing is a cultural custom practiced by those who live in dusty and sandy regions who traditionally wore sandals. Servants were typically the ones assigned to this work. Feet washing goes all the way back scripturally to Abraham's day. Abraham washed the feet of the three men who came in Genesis 18:1, and Jehovah appeared unto him in the plains of Mamre, and he sat in the tent door in the heat of the day, and he lifted up his eyes and looked, and lo, three men stood by him, and when he saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door, and bowed himself toward the ground, and said, My Lord, if now I have found favor in thy sight, pass not away, I pray thee, from thy servant. Let a little water, I pray you, be fetched, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. Lot invited the two angels to stay the night and wash their feet. Genesis 19:1. And there came two angels to Sodom at even, and Lot sat in the gate of Sodom, and Lot, seeing them, rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground. And he said, Behold now, my lords, turn in. And these bowings that is being done here is one of the words that we get worship from. They're bowing. He's identifying them as his Lord. I pray unto you, servant. He says, turn in, I pray, into your servant's house. Come into my house and tarry here all night. And wash your feet. And you shall rise up early and go on your ways. And they said, Nay, but we will abide in the street all night. Joseph's brothers are given water to wash their feet. And the man brought the men, Genesis 43:24. And the man brought the men into Joseph's house. And these men that he's bringing into Joseph's house is Joseph's brothers who have come because there's a famine in the land, and Joseph's brother has come, and now he's meeting with them. They bring him in the house and gave them water, and they washed their feet, and he gave their asses provender. In other words, he fed their animals. And so what you have here, brothers and sisters, is you have people in ancient times who culturally washed one another's feet. Why? Because their feet were dirty. The whole idea of washing feet is not to demonstrate some humility. Feet washing had a purpose. If your feet are not dirty, they don't need to be washed. If your feet are dirty and you come into someone's home, then as a good host, you want to make sure that you are serving your guest. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to wash their feet, but it does mean you have to provide the water for them to wash their feet. Why? Because that's being a good host and showing hospitality. If somebody comes to your home as a hospitable host, you're going to offer them something to drink. If they come to your house around dinner time, you're going to offer them something to eat. You want to make sure that when people come into your home, that they have a good experience while they're at your home. As believers, we are to demonstrate hospitality. As ministers, one of the qualifications of a minister is to show hospitality. Hospitality is huge among believers, and it is huge among people of the South. Southern people are generally hospitable people. They wave at strangers. I remember, man, growing up, and even today, I go into certain places, and I'm driving down the street, people waving at me, I'm waving at people. This is common in Fort Mill, where I live. You walk, folks don't know, they don't have to know you. They just say, hey, how you doing? I'm doing good, how are you? That's Southern hospitality, something that is typically lacking in the North, unless you have Southerners who have moved north, and if they've been there long enough, they've forgotten their Southern hospitality because they've become Northerners. Are you with me? And so, Aaron, his sons and the priests thereafter were commanded to wash their feet and hands when going into the tabernacle. Exodus 30:19. For Aaron and his sons shall wash their hands and their feet thereat. When they go into the tabernacle of the congregation, they shall wash with water, that they die not, or when they come near to the altar to minister, to burn offering made by fire unto Jehovah. So they shall wash their hands and their feet, and they die not, and it shall be a statute forever to them, even to him and to his seed throughout their generation. What is he saying? I don't want dirty-handed and dirty feet people coming into my tabernacle to serve me. Clean yourself up. From this, many have pulled into a mindset of what is known as Sunday best, where when a person is about to go into the church, they are to put on their Sunday best. They are to wash, take a bath, take a shower. Don't go up in the house of Jehovah or the house of God stanky. Brush your teeth, comb your hair, wash your face. Put on some clean underwear. Put on some clean socks. You wear your best when you go in the presence of the Almighty. There's no command in the Bible to do that. So where do people get that from? They get that from the Old Testament. That when the priests went into the house of the Almighty, they had to make sure they were at their best behavior, and they had to make sure that they were clean, and they had on clean garments, and they went through a process in order to go in the presence of the Almighty to serve him. And this was commanded by the Almighty to the priests. So you have people who reject the Old Testament, who's doing Old Testament stuff every time they go to church. The people of biblical time wore sandals. We wear socks and shoes. Now, if we lived in a dusty region, and I can take you to some regions, mostly in the Middle East, in Africa, in places where you have desert territory or sand and dusty areas, and you will find that in those regions, people don't wear socks and shoes traditionally. They wear sandals. And when you wear sandals, if you have, well, when going to a feast, the people would wash and travel. And you'll notice that when Yeshua was in John chapter 2, where the people came to this wedding feast, there were these big pots where they had water for ceremonial washing. And he took those pots, filled them with water, and then changed the water to wine. Those pots were there for ceremonial washing. It is tradition to make sure when you have guests who come that you provide. They shouldn't have to ask. And typically what happens is that when people come to your home and they want to use the bathroom, they'll ask, where's the restroom? And you point them to the restroom. And most people have, a sink. You would hope that when your guests go to the restroom, that they would wash their hands. And they shouldn't have to ask for a towel. Hopefully, you got a towel right nearby. Because, some of us, if you've gone into a bathroom and you wash your hands, you don't think about the towel before you wash your hands. Like some people don't think about the tissue before they sit down. But afterwards, when there ain't no tissue, we got a problem, Houston. So as good, hospitable people, we want to make sure and we think ahead for these kinds of things. And so when the people came to the feast, they would wash. Only their feet would need to be washed, which was typically the role of a servant. And in the temple, when people went up to the feast, there were mikvahs. They would immerse themselves. They wanted to be ceremonially clean. Now, this wasn't necessarily for the people commanded, but it was commanded for the priests. And so the people took on this priestly mindset when they're going to worship Jehovah in the temple, that many would get immersed. The priests had to. The people, out of tradition, did it. There is a well-known story in Luke, and I believe that this captures the whole point that I'm trying to make in this passage here. In Luke chapter 7, verse 37, and behold, a woman in the city which was a sinner, when she knew that Yeshua sat at meat in the Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster box of ointment, and stood at his feet behind him, weeping, and began to wash his feet with tears, and did wipe them with the hairs of her head, and kissed his feet, and anointed them with the ointment. Now when the Pharisee, which was bidden him, in other words, the one who invited him, saw it, and notice I highlighted these things. He spake within himself. Now when a person speaks within themselves, they're not talking out loud, right? And this is what he said within himself. If this man was a prophet, he would have known who and what manner of woman this is that toucheth him, for she is a sinner. Now, first of all, he let her in the house. It's his house. You've allowed a sinful woman to come into your house and begin to intermingle with your invited guests. And then got the nerve to judge if this man was a prophet. But see, Yeshua was the prophet. Yeshua the prophet answered the question Simon said within himself. Now, Simon has not muttered a word out loud because this is within him. And Yeshua answered, said unto him, Simon, I have somewhat to say to you. And he said, Master? Now, Simon calls him master, teacher. Say on. There was a certain creditor which had two debtors. The one owed 500 pence and the other 50. So what is he doing here? He's putting that woman in the same category as Simon, the Pharisee. And when they had nothing to pay, he frankly forgave them both. Tell me, therefore, which of them will love him most? Simon answered and said, I suppose that he to whom he forgave most. And he said unto him, you have rightly judged. And he turned to the woman and said unto Simon, seest thou this woman? I entered into your house. I came into your house. You gave me no water for my feet. What kind of guest is this? What kind of host is this? Not only did he not give him water for his feet, but he judged the woman who washed his feet. But she has washed my feet with her tears and wiped them with the hairs of her head. Thou gavest me no kiss, but this woman since the time I came in has not ceased to kiss my feet. What is he saying? This sinner is showing me more respect in your house than you are. That's an indictment to the religious. Because see, the religious will sit back and judge. They will judge the people who are serving. They will judge the people who are trying to walk out the commandments of the Almighty. They will speak down to those folks who are trying to do what the Bible actually say. They'll put themselves in the position of judgment as prideful people, lacking humility, and then want to put their humility on display by washing somebody's feet in a church service, whose feet ain't even dirty. He says, wherefore I say unto you, her sins, which are many, are forgiven. For she loved much, but to whom little is forgiven, the same loveth little. Ouch. What is he saying? You have shown me very little love in your house. You've not served. You've invited me in. And you got the audacity to condemn somebody who comes into your house and served me, and you lack the very service that she has demonstrated on your behalf in your house. This is your house. You call her a sinner. Do sinners normally come in and out of your house? Because by his disdain and then accusation against the master, whom he called master. But notice this. Simon the Pharisee called Yeshua master, indicating that Yeshua was greater than he, but did not lift a finger to serve him. John 13:1. Now before the feast of the Passover, and this is happening at the Passover, when Yeshua knew that his hour was come, that he should depart out of this world unto the Father, having loved his own which were in the world, he loved them unto the end. And so what is John telling us? Yeshua has come to his last teachable time with his disciples. He's been with them, he's taught them, and as we looked last week and the week before, we come to find that Yeshua spends his entire time teaching them, and they don't even get it. He tells them about the resurrection. He tells them he's going to be crucified. He tells them that he's going to be killed, and they rebuked him for saying some of this stuff. He told them that he would be just like Jonah was in the belly of the fish for those 3 days and 3 nights, that the Son of Man would be in the belly of the earth. He told them and taught them about the kingdom. And after the resurrection, as we looked at last week, he resurrected, spent 40 days with them, teaching them the things that he had already taught them. Why? Because they didn't get it. And so now he's bringing his ministry to a close, and he has this one last opportunity to teach them a lesson on humility. That's what the lesson is about. A lesson on humility and service. And so supper being ended, verse 2, being the devil having now put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him. Yeshua knowing, so get this, Simon is sitting in there with them. And this is to me, it's like, it's so powerful. He knows he's going to betray him, and yet he serves him. He knows Simon, Judas is gonna sell him out, but it didn't stop him from serving him. It didn't stop him from humbling himself. It didn't stop him from washing his feet. That's a lesson we can learn from the world, for the world. That even though the world may not necessarily agree with us, or follow our path, or follow our way, even religious people who may speak against us or go to the point of betraying us, it shouldn't hinder us from taking on the attitude of service. We should serve our enemies. We should love our enemies. If our enemies are hungry, we should feed them. If they're thirsty, we should give them something to drink. There is no excuse not to be a servant if you are a servant. If you are a servant, there is no excuse not to serve, and that goes for anybody. And Yeshua demonstrates this. So he rises from supper, laid aside his garments, took a towel, and girded himself. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and wiped them with the towel wherewith he was girded. Now, they sat down. Understand something. They had come into the house. They sat down. They'd already asked him, where are we going to, keep the Passover? He gives them some an illustration. Go down, find this person, go to their house, tell them we're going to keep the Passover here. They go through supper. All of them with dirty feet. Then cometh he to Simon. Now I want you to see something. He washed their feet. Nobody said anything. Why? Because it was customary. What wasn't customary is that the greatest among them was doing the service. The greatest among them, their master, their Lord, their Elohim, they called him, their Savior, is serving them. They're not serving him. He comes to Simon Peter, and Peter says unto him, Lord, no. Why would he say that? Because you're the master. And Yeshua said unto him, what I do thou knowest not. In other words, Peter, this is not the time to misbehave. There's a lesson here that I need you to learn. I need you to learn this lesson. Why? Because I'm about to be up out of here. And you need to get this lesson before I leave. In fact, all of y'all need to get this lesson before I leave, because this is how you're going to have to live and conduct yourself when I'm gone amongst each other. So you don't know what I'm doing, but in a moment you will. Peter said unto him, then in that case, no, he says, thou shalt never wash my feet. Yeshua answered him and said, if I don't wash your feet, you have no part in me. In other words, what is he saying? Listen, I need to teach you a lesson. And if I don't teach you this lesson and you don't learn this lesson, you're not going to be able to represent me. You're not going to be able to walk out as an ambassador. So you need to learn this lesson. Because if you don't learn this lesson, you can't represent me properly. And that's a lesson for all of us. Because if we don't learn humility and service in the work that we do for the kingdom, which means that it shouldn't be no pride, it shouldn't be nothing associated with your service to other people. It's not about you putting yourself on display. It's not about you being seen for the work that you do for the kingdom, because your Father who see you in secret will reward you openly. If you're doing what you're doing to be seen of men, you got your reward. They saw you. And so he says, if I don't do this, Simon, you don't have any part in me. And Simon says unto him, well, in that case, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. In other words, give me a total body wash. And here's one of the key verses in this passage. Should be in verse 10. Yeshua said to him, listen to this. Yeshua said to him, he that is washed need not save to wash his feet, but is clean every whit. And you are clean, but not all you. So what is he saying? If you've taken a bath, if you've washed yourself already, then the only thing that is exposed is your feet. So you don't need to take another bath. All you need to do is wash them dusty feet. And this is the whole process of feet washing, is making sure you're clean. But what does he say? You're already clean, but not all of you. And see, what he's dealing with here is not only, he's using an example in the natural to deal with a heart issue. You see, Judas is with us, but he ain't clean. Judas is serving with us, but his heart ain't right. Judas has got a motive for why he's here, and his motive is not the kingdom motive. His motive is the motive of the devil. He's doing what he's doing, not because he's motivated by the king, but because he's motivated by the evil one. And you will have people in the midst of you that is motivated by the evil one. And the only way you will know them is by their fruit. Why? Because you can't see their heart. Father sees the heart of men. He knows men because he knows their heart. You can't see their heart. The only thing you got is their fruit. And you'll know them by their fruit if you're properly inspecting fruit and doing it from a position of righteousness, not from self-righteous. See, the people who do what they do to be seen, they got their reward. But if you're doing what you're doing because it's in your heart to do, whether somebody say thank you or not, That's not, you're not doing what you're doing for them to say thank you. And if you got a problem because you did something for somebody and they didn't say thank you, your motivation is wrong. I remember back in the day, one of the cars that I've given away, fella at the time was in church, and then he backslid. And he's back out in the streets, going from dope house, getting involved in things, using the car that I gave him. And it was one of those moments where I regretted giving him that car. And Father had to deal with me because it says, you know what? When you gave him that car, that was it. It's no longer yours. You did what I told you. You did what you believe I led you to do. Now you're second guessing what I led you to do, what I told you to do, what you said I said do, because of what he's doing with it. See, that's walking by sight. When you give somebody a gift, let it go. If they don't do with it what you think they should do with it, they are not you. And it's not your gift anymore. If you still associated with that gift that you gave them, I've never seen you wear the gift. I never saw you wear it. When you going to wear what I gave you? Listen, if it's mine, I'll wear it when I want to. What's your problem? Oh, you don't appreciate what I did? Oh. So you did it for appreciation. I mean, what's your motivation for what you do? You see, when Father, and let me tell you something, this is huge in church. People give tithe, and then they want to watch what you do with it. How you spending the money, bruh? Well, you've done your part. Right? You've done your part. Are you still connected to your tithe? Are you still connected to your offering? Are you still connected to your first fruits? Are you giving it to Bailey or are you giving it unto him? And this be the place. See, I know, and let me tell you something. There is not a greater ground. See, I've been around. I've seen some stuff. I'm scared of God. The fear of him dwells deep in me. I've not found a greater, if I was going to run away with your money, we wouldn't have this building. Right? Folks, what did you do? You must have did something illegal. I mean, you only got a handful of people. How can you be paying cash for a building? That ain't your business. When we follow what the Almighty tell us to do, that's what we are supposed to do. He's the one who rewards you openly. If you still attached to your tithe, then it ain't his, it's yours. If you still attached to your offerings, if you still attached to the gifts you give someone, when you release it, let it go. Because Father said, don't dig up your seed. Don't dig up your seed. I remember when I came into the Hebrews movement. It was the Messianic faith at the time. And I reflected. I've helped people buy houses. I've given away cars. I've given people free rent. I've sold so much money. I've helped ministries buy their airplanes, their jets. I've sowed hundreds, thousands and thousands of dollars into the church. And when I came out the church, I started having some issues with all that money that I'd given the church out of ignorance, not knowing. If only I'd known. And Father had to remind me, you did what you did because you believed I told you to do it. Don't dig up your seed. You see, sowing in the right heart is sowing. That's what we. If I don't dig up the seed, even though I may have sowed out of the right heart, there's still a harvest to come from it. If you dig it up, there's no more harvest. If you badmouth it, there's no more harvest. You've killed it. You've ruined it. Continue. And Father said, listen, you sowed out of the right heart. Continue to look for the harvest that comes from your sowing. You may have sowed it over there, but understand something. You did it believing you were doing what I told you to do. So he says, if you have bathed, you're already clean. If you've bathed only, your feet need to be washed. As sandal-wearing people in a dusty, sandy region, only your feet would get dusty during walking or traveling. That's the only thing that would need to be washed. Verse 11, he said that, for he knew who should betray him. Therefore said he, you are not all clean. Now, here's the problem Yeshua is addressing. The disciples question on more than one occasion who would be the greatest among them. And this is where you got to take all of the whole counsel. Notice, these guys got into arguments about who's going to be the greatest among them. Matthew 18:1, at the same time came the disciples unto Yeshua saying, who is the greatest in the kingdom? Basically, he's trying to get them to say who his favorite is. You know how children have a tendency to try to get you love, I know you love her more than you love me. Or I know you love him more than you love me. Daddy, who your favorite? Who? And you know you can't say. So they're trying to get him, who's the greatest in the kingdom? Matthew 23:11. And he's told them on a few occasions, he that is greatest among you shall be your servant. Greatness is not about greatness. Greatness is about serving. You want to be great? Learn to serve. Serve who? Whomever Father puts you in the service of. And don't do it mumbling. Don't do it grumbling. Don't do it complaining. Do it with a grateful heart. Do it with the idea that you are honored to serve. Because there's some people out there that will affect your ability to serve. Their ungratefulness, their lack of appreciation, them not thanking you. And you got to watch your thoughts in the midst of this. You got to watch what you're speaking, just like Simon said within himself, and Yeshua answered him, even though it was inward. See, fathers see your questions. He see your thoughts. He see you struggling within. He see your complaints. Even though you may not verbalize them, they're in your heart. And out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Out of the abundance of the heart, you act. You can say one thing with your lips, but you'll do something else with your actions. That's hypocrisy. We've got to be a people to where we move from a place of saying one thing and doing something else to doing what we say, meaning what we say, following through. Don't make promises you don't keep. Father said, when I send my word forth, it does not return unto me void. In other words, he follow his word to make sure it accomplishes what he said it would accomplish. Don't tell somebody you're going to do something and don't do it. Don't make a promise and don't keep it. Don't make a vow and break it. Do what you say or don't say it. Don't let somebody pressure you to say something just so you can get them off your back. Because when your words go out, Father is holding you accountable for them. And just because you don't follow through on them, remember now, you're going to reap. Father is not mocked. Whatever a man sows, that is what he reaps. Some of us have had fathers who've said, they're going to do something and they don't do it. They've had, promises made and not kept. One of the things that, I have focused on my entire time as a parent is I don't let my children force me or pressure me into giving them an answer that I don't intend to carry out. If I tell my son or I tell my daughter I'm going to do something, they can take it to the bank. They will not be able to say, Daddy said and Daddy didn't do. In fact, if I don't plan on doing it, I'll say, no, I'm not going to do it. Or let me think about it. They know let me think about it is another way of saying no. But then sometimes I surprise them. But I'm not going to say, you could pressure me all you want. You could ask me 1,000 ways. You can go regroup and come back with another angle. Daddy's still daddy. And sometimes I'll get frustrated and say, listen, how many ways you going to ask the question? The answer is still the same. See, our words, we're not to release our words haphazardly or without thought. Once you speak, you, like Father, has to watch over those words to make sure they don't return empty. Nobody should ever say, you said, but you didn't do. That discredits you as a person. And if it discredits you as a person, it discredits you as an ambassador of the kingdom. Why should I believe what you say? Because you've said some stuff you didn't follow through on, you didn't do. So now, when you say stuff, why should I believe you? You've lost credibility. Luke 9:46. Then there arose a reasoning among them, which of them should be the greatest. Luke 22:24. And there was also a strife among them, which of them should be accounted the greatest. Yeshua is watching this. He's watching his disciples as they're walking, as they're going through their days, as they're going through the months, and he's looking at them, and they're vying for, top position. You know how people are. In one case, they got mama involved. Master, when you come into your kingdom, let my 2 sons sit on your left hand and on your right hand. The disciples heard that, and they were beyond messed up. It's like, man, there you go, bring your mom up in here. Putting pressure on the master like that. But there was strife among these brothers about who was going to be the greatest among them. Luke 22:26. But you should not be so. But he that is greatest among you, let him be as the younger, and he that is chief as he that does serve. Yeshua continually remind them, listen, you're to serve one another. Don't be like the world. The world, they want to rule over each other. Don't be called rabbi. Don't be called father. Don't take on that world mentality. And I tell you something, in ministry, because in the places that I've been, you got, ministers who have armor bearers. We haven't used that term here in a while, but some of you all have been in those environments. You got wives now who have armatress bearers, or I don't know what they call female armor bearers. Folks who want to carry the briefcase. Folks, they no, you shouldn't be carrying that. Let me carry that for you. And it's like, okay, what's the purpose in that? I mean, why you want to carry my briefcase? Is that so you could be up close? Is that so you could be seen as the one who's carrying the briefcase? I mean, what's your motivation? What's your purpose? Because I can carry my own briefcase. I'm not helpless. But there are motives and motivations in the hearts of people. And these are the kinds of things that we have to be mindful of, because, see, one of the things that the enemy tries to do is get up close. He'll try to get up close to you and disarm your suspicion. We had a lady in our ministry, man, she loved giving gifts to people. But there was a plot. In my former life, I used to be in community development. Not community development from a profit, but from a nonprofit, in the sense of helping to revitalize communities and dealing with cleaning up communities with drugs and gangs and all of the kinds of activities that make a community unsafe. And I joined forces with the police and became part of the Chief of Police Advisors Council. The police in the city knew, but the whole point was to drive drugs and gangs out of the neighborhood. And one of the things, see, drug dealers are smart, savvy people. Because after all, they got to sell their drugs, make money, keep from being caught by the police, keep from being ripped off, and make sure that they turn in the right amount of money to the people they're selling drugs for, to keep from being beat up or killed. And so they have turfs, territories. And one of the things that I would watch these young men do is that they'll take over a person's porch. They'll take over a corner, right? They'll come sit on your porch, and then they'll offer you something. See, the key is you never take nothing from a drug dealer. Nothing. Because the moment you take one little thing, you're forever in their debt. Forever. So they would sit on a porch, and they would give, the person in there, or they'll buy them a beer, or they'll give them a joint, or they'll do something, and next thing you know, what they've just done is that they've established their spot. There are people who try to establish their spot in your life. And they'll look for ways of getting in, whether it be flattery, or they'll give you a gift, or they'll do something nice for you. Because see, here's the way the world knows how things work. If I do something for you, Now you got to do something for me. You owe me one. You owe me one. You scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. Yeshua says, don't be like that. And this person would buy gifts and give them to people and do nice stuff for them and get them in her claws. Because this is what was happening. And see, nice people go under the radar. Now, if a person is being genuine in their dealings, there is no expectations or strings attached to what they're doing. It's just who they are. And they're not just that way with certain people, they are that way with everybody. See, when you see a person who is that way with everybody, you know you have a genuine person. But if they're selective, you might have a Judas on your hand. Because they're going to get up close until it's time to call in a marker. Now you're obligated. Yeshua says, listen, the greatest among you is going to be a servant. And here in verse 27, he says, for whether is greater he that sitteth at meat or he that serveth? Is not he that sitteth at meat? And then he says, but I am among you as he that serves. Yeshua says, listen, I'm the greatest among you, but guess what? I'm a servant to you. Yeshua deals with this issue of who is the greatest amongst them once and for all. The question. So after he had washed their feet and he had taken his garments and was set down again, he said unto them, do you know what I just did? Know you what I have done? Do you know what I just did? Because you got to get the picture. Yeshua is the master. If there's going to be foot washing at this supper, who should it be? Who should be the one who's going to take on the servant attitude? Understand something. You got people, Yeshua's disciples are arguing amongst each other who's going to be the greatest. So if they're arguing amongst each other who's going to be the greatest, who's going to take on a servant attitude? Nobody. So what happens? Nobody's feet get washed. And this would go on. So Yeshua now, he deals with this issue once and for all because he has dealt with it over the course of the ministry, and they still disputing amongst each other who is the greatest among them. The lesson. You call me master and Lord. And you say, well, for so I am. If then your Lord and master have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. You see what's happening here? I just served you. You got served. He served them. And Peter, with all of his humility, is like, no, wash my whole body. It's like, no, you don't understand what I'm doing, but you're going to understand here in a minute. You arguing about being the greatest among you, and you neglect the opportunity to be the greatest by serving your brethren. So I'm going to demonstrate to you what greatness looks like. Greatness looks like a servant. The takeaway, an example of service to one another, not instituting a tradition. He says, for I have given you an example. That's all it was. an example that you should do as I've done to you. Serve one another. Serve each other. Love one another. Stop bickering and disputing amongst each other. Focus on the commission. You got work to do. I'm going to use all of you. Every last one of you. I'm going to give all of you my spirit. And this is demonstrated in Acts chapter 15 when all of these apostles, all of these elders come together and James stands up. And the brethren, as they're listening to who is the Spirit speaking to in the midst of us. See, here's what religion has done. Religion has shut you down. Religion has caused you to focus on the main character. Religion has caused you to look at other people to demonstrate the power of the Almighty. Religion has taken away your authority and your power to walk in the authority and power you have been given by the Most High. Religion causes you to seek permission to do what He said. Religion has caused you to sit on your butts and look to other people to do the work. Well, I don't see the gifts moving, then move them. How come I don't see God's power, like it is in the Bible? Because you ain't releasing it. You got the Holy Ghost. You got the Holy Spirit. Can you talk? Can you lay hands? Can you pray? Can you minister? Can you cast out a devil? Can you prophesy? What are you doing? How are you serving? Are you serving? Who are you serving? Is the man getting all your service? Is your business getting all your service? Is your job getting all your service? Who you serving on your job? Who you serving in your neighborhood? Who you serving in your community? Who you serving in your church? Are you too busy looking to get fed than to feed? Are you still acting like a baby, or are you growing up and eating mature food? Still want to be titty fed, nursed. Grow up. That's what he's saying. Grow up. Be a servant. Because here's what's going to happen. Let me tell you something. You need humility to serve. But guess what happens? When you become a servant, you debase yourself. When you're not a servant, you exalt yourself. And those who exalt themselves, guess what's going to happen? They're going to be abased. But those who abase themselves, guess what's going to happen? They're going to be exalted. See, Father will take the servant and put him on the pedestal. And when the servant get on the pedestal, they're going to behave themselves on the pedestal because they know who put them there. I remember many years ago when I left the Baptist church, I stepped down from pulpit ministry. Father says it's time for you to go. I left the ministry. I'm Reverend Arthur Bailey. Those words used to sound, when I first heard them, it's like you could feel I'm somebody. I was somebody before that. But those words made you feel like, now you part of a somebody group. And then Father began to deal with that. Why you let them call you Reverend? There's no reverence. You won't find reverence in the Bible. Why people want to run around here and be called reverend? Because there's some pride in it. It's full of pride. And folks who have been taught to reverence man have a hard time. I watch people struggle. What do we call you? What do we call you? Arthur. My mama called me Arthur. My wife called me honey. My children called me daddy. And when I was growing up in the South, they called me boy. I don't like that. But that's what they call me. And you got to get comfortable in yourself to not allow titles to you can feel that something. I got a title. Folks like titles, don't they? They do, because it says, this is me. Well, our identity is not in our title. Our identity is hid. It's hid in Messiah. And that's who we're supposed to be demonstrating. And so when Father, he says, it's time for you to leave. So I'm stepping down from a place of prominence, going into a place where I'm a nobody. And as I go into the ministry, I'm looking and I'm watching and I see a need. The ministry didn't have a parking lot ministry. Now, this is Michigan. And if you're going to serve in Michigan in the parking lot, you got to deal with the seasons. You got to deal with the rainy season. You got to deal with the snowy season. You got to deal with the summer season, the hot season. You got all these seasons in Michigan where I was. You had all 4 seasons. In the spring and the fall, serving in the parking lot was wonderful. In the summer and the winter, not so. Directing traffic, taking umbrellas, opening doors, assisting moms with their children, showing people where to park, showing people where to come in, giving people instructions as they're entering in the building. And next thing you know, I got a staff. We're on a paid staff, but I had some volunteer staff. It's like, we need some help out here. Anybody want to volunteer? Now I got people out there directing traffic, good shoes, getting all ate up by the snow and the salt. But I remember in that parking lot, because what I didn't know is where the building was shaped. The pastor's office was way in the back in a private area. But the corner building, which would be the building that I ended up having my office, the pastor, it wasn't my office. He would come and he would stand, and it was all windows and it was glass windows, so you couldn't see in. And he's standing there watching me out in the parking lot serving. I didn't know this. Really didn't dawn on me. Didn't really care, because I'm out there serving. But here's what Father spoke clearly to me. He says, don't let men put you on a pedestal, because none of them will be there when I bring you down. Those words stuck with me to this day. Don't let men put you on a pedestal, because none of them will be there when I bring you down. And so I served, and the pastor began to inquire about me, because the first conversation he had with me, he knew that I was a minister in a Baptist church, and now I've left the Baptist church and I'm here serving in the parking lot, and he's inviting me now to be a part of his staff from the parking lot ministry. And that's how I got on the inside, serving on the outside. So I'm going to tell you something, brothers and sisters. When you take on the attitude of service, Father will take you and put you in places you can't see. You don't even know they exist. But he know how to get you where he want you to go. And this is exactly what he did. Yeshua says, I've given you an example that you should do as I've done to you. Verse 16, verily, verily, I say unto you, and here's the caveat. The servant is not greater than his Lord. See, they're talking about who's the greatest among them. And Yeshua is saying, listen, first of all, I'm the greatest among you. But I'm going to show you how to be great. I'll show you how to serve. And if you learn how to serve, greatness is your portion. Neither he that is sent greater than he that sent him. If you know these things, happy are you if you do them. Happy are you if you do them. Knowing them is not going to make you happy. It'll give you a sense of pride. It'll get you a little puffy because you know some stuff. But doing them is where the rubber meets the road. Being a hearer of the word and not a doer of the word means nothing. It deceives people. This whole idea, knowledge is power. No, applied knowledge. You will not see the power of your knowledge if you don't apply the knowledge that you're supposed to have. Religion creates traditions or commandments from illustrations. And the tradition that came from this illustration was a foot washing ceremony. Yeshua wasn't instituting foot washing. Religions focus on the illustrations while missing the messages. They focus on the illustration. They create traditions while missing the message. The message here is serving one another. The greatest among you will be a servant. You have to learn how to serve. We must shake, that's another message, the dust of religion, of traditions. We must shake this dust off our feet, focus on the message Yeshua taught in order to apply the lessons and not create traditions that demonstrate a form of godliness, but deny the truth or the power thereof. And that is my last slide. Shalom, saints. Tithing and giving first fruit offerings are critical parts of the believer's faith and has its foundation back in Genesis 4:4, when Abel brought of the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof. And Jehovah had respect unto Abel and to his offering. Abel was commended by Jehovah in Hebrews 11:4, where it states that by faith Abel offered unto God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, by which he obtained witness that he was righteous, God testifying of his gifts, and by it he being dead yet speaketh. Solomon said in Proverbs 3:9-10, honor Jehovah with thy substance and with the first fruits of all thine increase. So shall your barns be filled with plenty, and your presses shall burst out with new wine. The prophet Malachi wrote in chapter 3, verse 11 and 12, to bring ye all the tithe into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house, and prove me now herewith, says Jehovah of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing, that there should not be room enough to receive it. And I will rebuke the devourer for your sakes, and he shall not destroy the fruits of your ground, neither shall your vine cast her fruit before the time in the field, says Jehovah of hosts. And all nations shall call you blessed, for you shall be a delightsome land, saith Jehovah of hosts. When we tithe and give offerings consistently in obedience to Jehovah's commandments, we can count on him to keep his promises to us and consistently meet all of our needs. It is our Father's desire to bless you. However, It begins with you and your act of obedience to tithe and give offerings. Do it today. Shalom.
For more information, visit www.arthurbaileyministries.com or call 888-899-1479. House of Israel International Services is made possible through financial contributions from brothers and sisters like you. Thank you.